Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Jeremy,
I'm Alan.
and you are officially tuned into the GG Dispatch each week on Tuesday, bright and early. We consolidate the week's biggest headlines in gaming news. Whether you're listening in on your commute, during your workout, or you just have us on in the background, we want to thank you for listening in. And speaking of thanks, another thank you to the kind folks at Audio Technica for providing the microphone that Alan uses, the AT2020 USB X. Whether you're just starting out on your content creator journey or you're a seasoned pro, Audio Technica has the products for you. So, it's been a very busy weekend. I know we didn't have our show last week as well. I think we were. It's just been very hectic, and then this last weekend was Comic Con. But before I get into Comic Con shenanigans, Alan, I want to know how I've been hearing. I'm not really big in sports video games, and I know you're more into the sports you know uh video game scene than I am. And so I'm curious. I've been hearing a lot about this new college football game. Have you played it? What are your thoughts on it? Like what's all the buzz about?
Oh yeah, so basically it's the name of the game is College Football 25, and basically it's been roughly 10 years since the release of the last one. So what the whole reason for that is that uh college football players nowadays, it's very common, like they introduce new rules where they can get paid for like their name and image and likeness, basically. But back in 2014, that wasn't the case, and so EA could kind of see the writing on the wall of like, this is a thing that's coming down the pike, and we don't really want to mess with it while it's all kind of being sorted out in the courts and within the players and the NCAA itself. So they decided to stop making it. And so now that we do have sort of those systems in place where the players can get paid, this is the first year that it's back, and it's back in a big way. Like, it feels so good to play that game because it is very different from Madden. Like, you would think that they would just make a reskin version of Madden, but it's not that.
Right.
It has its own very unique style. The speed of play, the types of plays you can run, all of it is very different from Madden. And then you get, of course, all the color of all the schools and the fight songs, all that. So it just feels good to be back in that, and it's kind of even pushed my FIFA game off to the side. I've been playing this mostly. Um, and so far, I really liked the gameplay, but it is a bit lacking in certain areas, specifically in the career mode. So, as you know, I have my player in FIFA who also has his own career mode and kind of going through the ranks and everything. And they do
Hmm.
something similar here, but it doesn't quite work out if you don't play the right position. Like right now, I really like to play cornerback, so defensive back covering receiver. And with the way it's set up, like I don't really get to play often. When I do get to play, the coach will kind of just pull you out of the game for some reason, even though you're not really tired. You get sit out for maybe a quarter or two, and like for realism, I get that you want the player to be rested, right? And that does happen in games. You get a player who sits down to catch a breather, but like not for that much. And so with that, you don't really get an opportunity to make as many plays. And for me as a corner, I do a really good job of covering the wide receiver, so the quarterback's not going to throw that way, right? Like
Right.
it's a bad move to do that, which kind of compounds my issue of gathering stats that I need to compete for any kind of awards at the end of the season. So I definitely feel like that one is a bit broken, that game mode, unless you're a quarterback and like you're just in every single play. They're not going to pull you there.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, you can tell that it's year one. There's also a lot of glitches that kind of show up, which is kind of normal for EA in general. Like FIFA, even though it's a much more mature game, like there's bugs all over the place in that game too. So, um, but like just the overall how they work, that Road to Glory mode could definitely use work. I know that Snowbike Mike of Kind of Funny mentioned like the lack of music, and yeah, man,
Hmm.
like you get tired of that same drum line after a while because I'm in there for a couple of hours every day,
It's
and
like
it's just
Marvel
like
vs. Capcom, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 gonna take you for a ride all over again. Just on
exactly,
loop.
except it's just a drum. It's just a drum line, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's rough. So they definitely need to go back. They need to have a soundtrack that makes sense in this game, like it does in their other games, like in FIFA. It's an awesome soundtrack that you get. So they need to work on that. They need to figure out a way for Road to Glory to work, or just make it a quarterback only thing. But at least the gameplay itself is a ton of fun. To go online and play friends is a lot of fun. So I'm happy with it that we finally have it back, and that this is year one, so it should start to get better.
Yeah, for sure. I yeah, I have been hearing a lot of like buzz around it, and it's really interesting because you were saying you were expecting sort of like a reskinned Madden, but there is a lot of variety in how this game plays, which again, from the outside looking in, I would think the same thing. I'm like, how different can a football game be, right? From one game to another. Like what, you know, you have the same kind of playbook, you have the same kind of structure. Like maybe there could be some variation in the independent, the solo player journeys and things like that. But uh, it, before this game came out, I didn't really have a very good grasp on how different they could be or how they could improve upon the base formula. But based on the very positive reviews and reception of this game, I can tell now, like, oh yeah, no, there's definitely room to grow in the genre and to do things a little bit differently and to bring different players in and that sort of thing. And so, um, yeah, so that was really cool to hear. And then so the other thing, of course, that you've been staying up to date on is House of the Dragon, which remains on my list of things to do.
Oh,
But
Jeremy, you gotta, bro. You gotta get back into this. It's
I
so
know,
good. Last
yeah,
night was the penultimate episode, so this Sunday, sadly, is the last one. But man, what an amazing season has been so far. I love all the twists and turns. I love where the story's going. Yeah, they haven't had any like dips in quality. Like after that first episode and kind of like how that goes, you're like, oh, how are they going to top this? But they managed to keep the momentum going, and it's just an overall really strong season. So I'm excited for that finale this Sunday, and you need to get into it.
yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, and I definitely want to get into it for sure. Um, and we had talked about it before when that first episode sets that high watermark, right? It can be very difficult for you to say like, oh, okay, like it's going to continue to deliver. You expect a dip in quality, right? You expect things to kind of degrade, but not only from you, but also from pretty much everybody who's talking about this show. It's just been banger after banger. Like it's just been maintaining that level of consistent quality, which is really great. Now, odd, you know, uh, there with the Game of Thrones universe, the sex scenes and stuff are always going to be a little bit weird, and so there's definitely some of the things we're like, I don't know about that, but in terms of the general quality and structure of the series, and I would say I've been hearing a lot of great things, and that's part of the reason why I want to dig into it. And it's only 2 seasons, or 2 seasons so far, so now is a good time for me to catch up before it gets to be 3 or 4 seasons long, and then
It's only an
and then I
episode this
feel.
season too. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
shorter than the Game of Thrones seasons, which are like 10 episodes long.
Yeah, exactly. So rather do it now than 2 or 3 seasons from now when it's like, oh well, now I'm too far behind. I'll just read the Wikipedia. So yeah. Well, anyways, glad to hear that House of the Dragon is still holding up. I definitely want to get into that. And now that I've finished Elden Ring and Comic Con is behind me, we've got a few weeks until PAX. I'll be going to PAX West, uh, and maybe I'll knock out some TV watching in the meantime. Finally, watch Fallout, and some House of the Dragon. That's on my to do list.
What, you hadn't watched Fallout yet?
No, dude.
Oh man.
I don't watch TV a ton. Like I'm watching I'm watching Downfall. I'm watching Critical Role's Downfall. Which is a lot. So it does take up a lot of my bandwidth. But um I will return to watching some TV, and those are on my short list. Between the two, you would say House of the Dragon first?
Um
I need your direction here. I need your guidance.
so you're referring to like Fallout versus House of the Dragon, which one's to watch first?
Yeah, which one to watch first?
I would say knock out Fallout first and then jump into House of the Dragon.
Okay. And you're making that recommendation strictly off of, like, length? Like, just
Yeah,
it's easier to,
like
like, finish
Fallout
it?
moves a bit quicker. Like,
Okay, okay.
the once you kind of start at season one, like I said, it is a much more reserved, slower pace, really setting up the world, the characters, and I'm referring to House of the Dragon here. And then once you
Mhm.
get into season two, things start happening, and it's just an obscene level of hype, and you're going to want to keep watching the next and the next and the next one. So
Gotcha.
I think just a nice, a smooth ways to kind of like get that fallout because it has its own like really hype moments, but then kind of like you kind of get a little bit of a breather with that season one of House of the Dragons a little bit slower, and then season two kicks it up.
Alright, sounds good. I will plan on that. Um, but as I was mentioning, Comic-Con this past weekend, I was there all weekend long, Wednesday preview night through closing out the show yesterday. Um, and it was a pretty wild weekend. It was pretty crazy, pretty busy the whole time, um, and it was just a ton of fun as usual. Of course, Marvel made their return, and so last year with the strikes and everything, Comic Con was a lot more muted. There wasn't all of the AAA panels and all that other stuff. There wasn't a lot of promotion going on for upcoming movies or shows. It was just a lot harder to have that side of the con, deliver. Um, and so it was markedly more quiet on that side of things. It was more about the comics and the writers and the creators and that sort of thing, which for some subsections of Comic Con and the attendees was great. They loved that. There was more room to walk around on the floor and that sort of thing. And then for other folks, they didn't like it, right? It didn't feel like it had the same level of energy or, hype or something like that. So it was sort of a double edged sword. Uh, but that is all gone this year. Again, Marvel has returned. And I spent Thursday, we went to a couple of panels for Image Comet or for the DC Power Panel, the Absolute Power Panel. This is a new event that's coming up later this year, basically involving, uh, a key character in DC being able to remove all of the heroes' powers and keep them locked on this alternative version of Earth. No access to the multiverse, no access to anything else. Like they're literally stuck, and they don't have any powers, but they still are heroes at heart. And so you know, how they can rebel and still maintain their heroic, you know, uh, what's the word? Designation, I guess, in that world. And of course, Absolute Batman, as part of that run, is sort of the most interesting because he doesn't have powers, like he's a playboy billionaire with a lot of toys and he knows kung
He's
fu.
got gadgets.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really interesting. Nick Dragotta is doing the art, and Scott Snyder is doing the writing, and that was the book I think that a lot of people are really looking forward to. It's a very different sort of take on Batman's design. It's very reminiscent of like the Frank Miller style. It's very big, like he's very thick, very beefy Batman. He was jokingly called the Batman who lifts, and that sort of thing. And so it's a very interesting design, and a lot of people are super interested in it. And overall, I think Snyder did a really great job of kind of selling his vision of what he wants for that. Um, so that was the DC panel, and then that afternoon, more related to video games, uh, there was a really cool panel with various anime and video game artists, including Hitoshi Ariga, who is the artist for Mega Man, Master Mix, Mega Mix, and Giga Mix. And as you know, Alan, as probably folks who follow the Geekly Grind know, I am a huge Mega Man fan, and so I was very interested in this panel and also the opportunity to get something signed by Hitoshi, which I did later in the weekend. Um, but it was really cool because when I was at that panel, he was awarded an Ink Pot Award by the Comic Con it's not staff, but basically the board, recognizing his contributions to the comic industry for his long running work on Mega Man. Um, so that was really cool to be in the room when that happened. And when I tweeted it and I tweeted it out, I think it was a very niche sort of panel, and it wasn't really what people were expecting. And so it got this international traction, and people in Japan are like liking and retweeting this and like tagging Eureka in it and all this other stuff. So that was kind of fun. Um, and yeah, I mean, through the course of the weekend, saw a handful of really great panels. Went to the Eisners, which is like the Oscars for comic books. Went to the Critical Role panel on Saturday for their Q&A. Had an interview with Jason Aaron about the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic, and did a bunch of signings. Went to Bandai Namco and talked to them about their toys and all the other good stuff. So it was part work, part play, but more work than play, I would say. But it was all fun, and
So,
definitely had that energy uh, through the weekend for sure. Um,
so is there any one thing that was your favorite part like something that just went past everything else is your favorite thing at Comic Con?
um, I think personally, my autograph with Hitoshi Ariga was really awesome. Getting to meet with him, and I got like a limited edition like gold art card that has like Mega Man and Rush on it, and I had him sign my Master Mix #1, so that was super cool. And then I think the second thing would be the interview with Jason Aaron that we had. I partnered up with Lance from Comic Book Keepers, which is an affiliated podcast with the Geekly Grind, and we just had a great 30-minute conversation with him on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, his approach, and things like that. And so that'll be getting going up pretty soon. Um, so folks listening to this can look forward to that soon. Um, but I just I always enjoy an opportunity to connect with a creator, especially one like Jason Aaron, who's done work on Thor. Like he's the one who wrote the God of Thunder run, um, and Doctor Strange, and he worked on like Uncle Scrooge, and he did an amazing run on Star Wars. And so those unfamiliar with Jason Aaron or comics in general just know he's done some of the most recognizable work in the last 15 to 20 years. And now he's working on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Um, and the first issue came out on last Wednesday. So just in time for Comic Con, it had launched. So yeah, I would say those were my favorites, but getting signatures from creators that I love and finding cool toys on the floor, and I got to spend a couple of days with my wife as well at the show, so that was a lot of fun. And yeah, so it's always a good time.
Is there
But
anything
also,
about
yeah,
Comic Con that like you think like, man, I really wish they would change this? Anything that's like particularly annoying or bothersome?
I mean, I know it's a very in demand show. I do wish that there was, and full transparency, I say this from a place of privilege as somebody who qualifies for press passes, and I don't have to worry about like fighting for a badge. However, I do think for those that do have to fight for a badge, that there should be a better system to help spread the love, so to speak. Because I've heard stories from people like when I tell them I'm going to Comic Con or whatever, they tell me like I've literally been trying to get a badge for 5 years, like, and they just can't. Like every time it comes around, they have difficulty getting
That's
a
tough.
badge. Yeah, it's really tough, and so uh, and at the same time, I understand like returning guests, like there should be some priority there, but maybe it's a priority for like a day of their choice or something like that, rather than just like giving them first pick at like full weekends or something. I'm not sure what the solution would be necessarily, but when it comes to both getting badges and also hotels, because the hotel lottery is also a nightmare. So those systems I think could use a little bit more refinement, a little bit more innovation, and I think that would help folks out a lot. But, but yeah, overall, great time. Had a great time hanging out with some friends and checking out a bunch of awesome stuff. But enough about that. Let's talk about our stories for today. We got 3 stories, starting with video game voice actors go on strike. The voices of your favorite video game characters are going on strike. This is from Nicole Carpenter at Polygon. The Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists announced Thursday that video game performers will go on strike July 26th at 12:01 a.m. That was a few days ago now. More than 2,500 video game performers, a group that includes voice actors, motion capture performers, and others, head to the picket line after nearly 2 years of negotiations with major video game companies. The biggest sticking point in negotiations is the unrestricted use of artificial intelligence, according to a news release. Video game performers want protections over the use of their likeness and voices. Any video game in production prior to August 25th is not subject to the strike, per the strike rules, and clarified by Audrey Cooling, a spokesperson for the video game company side of the Interactive Media Agreement. That means Grand Theft Auto 6 and other in development projects won't be impacted unless union members elect voluntarily not to work on those titles. 18 months of negotiations have shown us that our employers are not interested in fair, reasonable AI protections, but rather flagrant exploitation, SAG-AFTRA Interactive Media Committee Chair and Hi-Fi Rush voice actor Sarah Elmala said in a news release. We refuse this paradigm. We will not leave any of our members behind, nor will we wait for sufficient protection any longer. The group of video game companies negotiating with SAG-AFTRA includes Activision, Electronic Arts, Insomniac Games, Take-Two Productions, Warner Brothers Games, and others. Video game performers will stop work, meaning no more recording for video games, when the strike begins on Friday. Cooling said in a statement to Polygon that the companies are disappointed the union is choosing to go on strike so close to a deal. Here's the full statement. We are disappointed that the union has chosen to walk away when we are so close to a deal, and we remain prepared to resume negotiations. We have already found common ground on 24 out of 25 proposals, including historic wage increases and additional safety provisions. Our offer is directly responsive to SAG-AFTRA's concerns and extends meaningful AI protections that include requiring consent and fair compensation to all performers working under the IMA. These terms are among the strongest in the entertainment industry. The holdup around AI appears to be over protections to on-camera video game performers like motion capture performers, according to the Washington Post. They're saying we'll protect voiceover performers, but we won't protect anybody else, SAG-AFTRA's executive director Duncan Crabtree Ireland told the Post last month. The bottom line is if you have performers working for you, helping create the content that's in your game, whether it's voice on content, stunt work, or motion work, all of those performers deserve to have their right to have informed consent and fair compensation for the use of their image, their likeness or voice, and their performance. It's that simple. Throughout the strike, voice actors and others under the Interactive Media Agreement will still be able to work on projects that use one of several updated contracts that offer critical AI protections to members. SAG-AFTRA said depending on the work that's being contracted, likewise, voice actors can still work on games that enter production before the August 25th cutoff. So, here we are again, another round of strikes. This time, AI again kind of taking center stage. But what's your thinking on this, Alan, in terms of how video game performers in particular are kind of raising this cry?
I think it's completely reasonable. It's like basically self-preservation. If I'm pretty sure that most game companies, if left to their own devices, would 100% just clone, these voice actors' voices and then just use them across whatever title they want to say whatever the character needs to say. Because especially for voice actors, like obviously they have their fans who know what they look like, but like most people who play games like have no idea who they are. They just know that it's the voice that's coming from that character's mouth. That's it. I don't think they particularly care that it's any of the big time voice actors. So, and also I think it's cool that the voice actors who have more leverage are helping the mocap people. I think the biggest sticking point is the mocap people, who I think that game companies are kind of seeing like, oh, this is just data, not really like a performance, but it's very much a performance, right? Like whenever you see a character, jumping around in a scene or doing any kind of movement, really, or like, for example, my sports games, like a lot of it is based on animations that they get off of mocap actors. So I think it is neat that again that the voice actors are kind of using their leverage to help them out.
Yeah.
And that's really the strength of a union, right? That even though they might be different disciplines, they still care about each other and will have each other's back when it comes time to negotiate stuff like this. So I'm all for it. Some games get delayed, some games get delayed, but I think that they're making the right move for themselves for sure.
Yeah, I think the idea of various disciplines sort of like looking out for one another is that idea of like the slippery slope, right? I think the voice actors definitely are interested in protecting those in motion capture, et cetera, because they know that the street goes both ways. If they don't stand up for those protections, if they're like, "Hey, I got mine," like I got my protections, I'm good. You're just out of luck. Then kind of breaking that trust, right, with that division of professionals means that down the road, if the motion cap voice actor, if something's happening with the voice actors again, then the motion cap actors won't have their back, right? They'll just be like, well, once you had what you wanted, you kind of just walked away. But that idea of solidarity is really what helps drive the power of these unions, right, and the power of these negotiations. And so, I think that's definitely really refreshing to see. Um, and we're just going to continue to see this kind of push and pull. There were have been a number of lawsuits that have come up lately, and it's a bit cynical of me, but I think the idea of like major companies, for example, like suing, you know, whether it's ChatGPT or oh, what's the major image one? Um,
Uh,
Midjourney. Yeah,
yeah.
Midjourney. Yeah, like those sorts of lawsuits. Some people see those online and they like it and retweet it, and they're like, yeah, they're AI is going down, like whatever. And I'm like, no, it's more like the corporations are just making sure that they all play ball properly. It's not in any interest of like the individual artist or creator. So, so like I still wouldn't leave it to the companies to do what's right unless you know we had these shows of solidarity and efforts from demographics like voice actors, from motion capture actors, et cetera, et cetera. So great to see that. I wish them all the best in their strike, and I hope that they're successful at achieving their ends. Speaking of which, here's a segue for you. Bethesda Game Studios workers have unionized. This is from Jay Peters over at The Verge. More than 200 developers at Bethesda Game Studios, the studio behind hit franchises like The Elder Scrolls and Fallout, have unionized with Communications Workers of America. 241 workers, including artists, engineers, programmers, and designers, have signed unique union authorization cards or indicated that they wanted union representation via an online portal. Microsoft has recognized the union, the CWA says. The company has already recognized unions formed by Activision QA workers and ZeniMax Studios QA workers. The CWA describes it as the first wall-to-wall union at a Microsoft video game studio, meaning that all eligible job titles will be represented by the CWA instead of just one type of worker, according to the CWA's Catalina Brennan Gattaca. Until now, all of the unions at Microsoft-owned studios have been only formed by QA workers. The Bethesda workers will be members of CWA Local 2108 and CWA Local 6215 in Maryland and Texas, respectively. And Microsoft didn't immediately reply to a request for this comment. Request for comment. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we were talking about before, right? Like, this is how video game employees can help to safeguard their livelihood, is by unionizing. And after the absolutely awful 18 months in the industry that we've seen, I think there's even more impetus than ever for them to start unionizing and protecting themselves.
Yeah, I think that this is like just. I mean, we have seen a couple of studios, but it's been more on a smaller scale. But I think that with the unions kind of picking up, especially at the Microsoft studios, that could then start to spread to some of the other studios, bigger studios, because, like you said, it's just been super rough, man. Thousands upon thousands of jobs that have been lost due to layoffs, and like the union can't protect you like all the way from that, but at the very least, it can set you up so that you don't feel like the rug has been completely pulled out from under you, as we've seen many, many, many times, unfortunately. So I think that we're gonna see it again more and more. Probably to the point where it just becomes a common thing where like they're all unionized. And I think it's for the better because again they do. We've always heard about the crunch and everything, and along with being let go at the end of a project and stuff like that. So hopefully things get better from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Last article for the day. The Xbox 360 store shuts down for good today. Womp womp. The marketplace was live for almost 19 years. This is by Evan Campbell at GameSpot. The final countdown has begun for the Xbox 360 store, which officially shutters today after opening shop almost 19 years ago. That means you won't be able to buy Xbox 360 games or DLC on the marketplace in a matter of hours. However, they still will be available to play and re-download for people who have already purchased the content. Larry Hryb, also known as Major Nelson, marked the occasion on X, saying it was his pleasure sharing all the thousands of marketplace sales and updates I've given over the years. Just over a year ago, Hryb left Xbox after spending 22 years with Microsoft, with his last position being Senior Director of Corporate Communications. In August 2023, Microsoft announced that the Xbox 360 store will be closing today, July 29th, giving people almost a year heads up. Additionally, the Microsoft Movies and TV app will no longer function on the 360 systems, meaning you can't view your content on those consoles. However, Microsoft does say that any backwards compatible Xbox 360 and original Xbox games will still be available for purchase on the Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox.com. Online multiplayer support, meanwhile, depends on publishers and developers for Xbox 360 games and won't be affected by the store's shuttering. As for Xbox, the latest big update for consoles and cloud arrived last month, bringing new background customization, subscription management on consoles, and mouse and keyboard functionality for cloud gaming. Well, Alan, it's the end of an era. It's tough because they mention, like this digital workspace, right? Like you can't, like, especially with the Microsoft TVs and TV app, they're like, no, you can't watch TV on it anymore. Like it's really concerning in this digital age that when a company decides that your platform or your content is no longer good, they can just kill it. And I don't like it.
Honestly, it's kind of a miracle that they supported it for like 19 years. I didn't even realize it had been that long.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, it is a long time in tech for sure.
but like, yeah, when you think about it, there were a lot of sort of those what do you call it, Xbox Live arcade games that like were only ever released on there, and those are effectively gone now. Like if you never bought them way back when, or even I guess up until like a couple of days ago, you could still buy them. But I don't those were never released on disc as far as I know, and that was the only way to get them. So those are kind of just gone, I guess.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, it's and that's why folks have. I feel like there's definitely been a return to analog in the past, number of months and better part of the last year, where people are seeking out those games that they really like to find them on a physical format because otherwise they're not. There's not really a way for them to maintain it, and that's why I'm also really nervous about digital only releases and a digital only movement because you know if something like that happened and suddenly the game that I love the most isn't able to be played anymore, well, I'd like to be able to have a physical copy that I could put into a console and play no matter what. Like I could play 30, 40, 50 years from now, even if the servers have long been turned off. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I mean, I never had a 360. I'm trying to think. Did I have a 360 ever? I might have briefly. I think my brother-in-law gave me one, and I played Skyrim on it for a little while. But other than that, like I never really had the 360. But I know that it the marketplace, and the online presence for the 360. That was really the period when Xbox was sort of pulling ahead. I think in the console wars, right? Like that.
Yeah, yeah. Xbox 360 dominated that gen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the pricing on the PS3 at the time was just it was off base, and then the online component wasn't as good. So yeah, 360 definitely enjoyed its time in the sun, and a big part of that was the robustness of its online community and the robustness of its online platform. So, and a big part of that being, of course, the store, which has been run for 19 years and now has been put to bed. But um, here is to the next 19 years of a digital Xbox marketplace.
How long until we see that PS3 one shut down?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe Sony will just keep it online to spite them for a while. Who knows?
I don't know
Um,
about that one.
yeah, it does take money, it does take resources to do so, but I wouldn't be surprised if they close in the next year. Certainly by the time the PS6 comes out, I think they would probably shutter it by then to try to
So
get people to
once
transition.
like the PS6 and Xbox Series Y, I guess, whatever they end up calling it, come out, if there is like if they're all digital basically, the both Sony and Microsoft are like no more. It's all, you can only buy them from the store. Would that make you reconsider even picking either one of those up with like your series, I mean your PS5 and eventually maybe Series X be kind of like your last consoles?
No, I would still buy consoles. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna like it, but I'm gonna have them. Like I I I feel like I would vote with my wallet in the sense that any any studio that released a game physically, I would purchase. And the ones that I really liked, I would purchase, the collector's editions and spend more money on the physical copy, etc. So that's kind of how I would continue along would be to do that. Because I don't think the PSX is going to be fully digital. I still think there will be a disc drive. I think PS7 is when they're going to go fully digital. And I mean, at that point, I would hope that they would still have a periphery, like a peripheral where you can like plug it in for a disc or something. Um, and get an extra 80 to $100 out of me at the time. Um, so I don't think they'll go all in on digital. I think there will still either be a like a drive on the console or an external drive that you can get for some time to come. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that like I would have agreed with you a couple of months back, but after the Alan Wake 2 release and then Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth coming out on two discs, and they were like very like, yo, you're gonna get, a physical copy out of this. And like that game struggled with sales. Alan Wake 2 sold fine, like without without the digital, the physical copy. And then the whole kind of controversy about how that whole physical copy is going to work on
Yeah.
PS5 versus Xbox. I feel like it might not be Sony or Microsoft making that decision. It might be publishers who are like, we don't want to spend money on another disc to have two or three discs or whatever.
Yeah. I'm yeah, we'll see. I am hopeful that the the return to analog, like the popularity of records, the popularity of, folks seeking out these physical copies of the games will be enough of a hint to the publishers and Sony and Microsoft and everybody that they'll say like, okay, we won't leave it fully by the wayside just yet. We will offer them an alternative, right? We'll give them an option, um, and that way the physical experience can still be around. Because if they go fully digital, again, like I said before, the only way I would be more comfortable going all in on digital is if they overhaul the digital marketplace. You know what I mean? Like make the digital games retain some sort of value, make them have some sort of like, like rental kind of properties or, returning properties or whatever the case might be. Like, if you have the game
The ability to
for,
just gift them to someone.
yeah, or something like, I don't know. Again, it would require a big, a room with a huge whiteboard and probably about, a 3-day workshop with all the biggest and, the best brains at the various studios. But I think it would be an exercise well worth having to have a better understanding and a better, not understanding necessarily, but like better build out how they move forward with digital to make it more appealing. Because kind of shoehorning people into the digital age is I mean, it will work. It'll work, but it won't work as well as if they, you know, are being more strategic about it and, made some changes that actually make digital valuable to the customer. So
Well, there's
that's
always Nintendo who aren't necessarily always on the cutting edge, and you can't convince me that they don't love selling cartridges that little kids can lose easily. So mom and dad have to buy them another one.
and to sell a 4-year-old game for $65. I mean,
Exactly.
that's that's the Nintendo way. Somewhere in the middle is what I'm looking for. Okay, somewhere in the middle. Um, and all right. So speaking of games, buying games, do we have any deals to speak of this week?
They're not the best deals, but PlayStation is having its what they're calling their back to school specials, and you can find them on Amazon, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, the usual suspects. Again, nothing too overwhelming. If you've been for some reason looking to get into PSVR 2, they have a $200 discount on that. So that would be a good price point considering the tech that you're getting and knowing that they've basically abandoned it. If you've been really wanting to get it, because from everything that I've heard from VR people, it's a really nice headset. So maybe it's worth it to you. That would probably be the best deal of the lot. But it's mostly first party titles. So I know that the Ratchet and Clank game is 29.99. I believe Little Sackboy was 19.99. Demon Souls 29.99. So some games are sort of on their sort of lowest price ever, but a lot like Marvel Spider-Man 2, I think it's still 50. So that's not that good of a deal in my opinion. But there are some deals there, and it's worth checking out if there's any first party Sony titles you've been wanting to pick up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, yeah, and the ones that you're interested in, save a few bucks. If it's enough to kind of push you over the edge to be like, yeah, you know what, that's a worthwhile price to me, then jump on it. Um, cool. Well, then that does it for this week's episode. Until next time, I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alan.
Keep gaming, everybody.
See ya.